Hello and welcome. If you've ever wanted to really get a handle on the Gospel of Mark, you are absolutely in the right place. We're about to jump into the shortest, most action-packed account of Jesus' life. Seriously, this story moves at a breakneck pace, and it has a message that's just so clear and so urgent. So together, let's uncover its core theology and what it really means to be a disciple. Okay, let's dive right in. To really understand any book of the Bible, we have to start with the basics. Who wrote it? When was it written? Who was it for? And maybe most importantly, why? So for the Gospel of Mark, the evidence points to John Mark, who was a very close associate of the Apostle Peter. Now, this is huge because it means the book is just saturated with Peter's eyewitness testimony. It was most likely written in the late 50s or early 60s AD to believers in Rome. And think about that audience. These are people who needed to hear about a king with an authority far greater than Caesar. And the central theme, the big idea that holds it all together, it's that Jesus is the servant king who came to give his life for others. All right, so here's our roadmap for this study. We'll start with those foundations we just touched on, then we'll get into the urgent story of this servant king. After that, we're going to dive deep into the book's theology and look at this massive shift from law to grace. Then we'll talk about what it means for us today, what it means to be a disciple, and we'll wrap it all up by focusing on the ultimate purpose of Jesus' mission, to be a ransom for many. Okay, Section 1, Mark's Gospel, the Foundations. A fast-paced, action-oriented account of Jesus, the Son of God. You see, Mark's Gospel is, well, it's just different. It's the shortest and the most urgent of the four, and it moves with this brisk, almost breathless pace. It's an account that's defined by action, by what Jesus does, and it's all designed to show us that Jesus is the mighty Son of God, whose words and works reveal this undeniable divine authority. Just look at how Mark begins. Unlike the other Gospels, there's no long genealogy, no birth story. He just gets straight to the point with this powerful declaration. It's really both a title and a thesis statement for the whole book. And from this one verse, bam, we're plunged directly into the action with John the Baptist out in the wilderness. Mark wants us to immediately focus on what Jesus does, because his actions are what reveal exactly who he is. So with that urgent start in mind, let's look at how the rest of the story unfolds. This is Section 2, the Servant King's urgent story, mapping the narrative movements of Jesus' ministry. Understanding the structure of the book is absolutely essential if we're going to grasp its message. The whole narrative basically unfolds in three major movements. First up, we have the Galilean ministry, that's chapters 1 through 8, where Jesus' authority is just powerfully established through his teaching and his miracles. Second, there's the journey to Jerusalem in chapters 8 through 10. And here, the focus really starts to shift to the cost of following him and his own impending suffering. And finally, you have Passion Week in Jerusalem, chapters 11 through 16, which, as you know, details his final showdown, his crucifixion and his resurrection. So in that first section, that Galilean ministry, Jesus' actions are just, well, they're shocking to everyone. He's casting out demons, he's healing diseases, and then he declares himself Lord over the Sabbath. This is radical stuff. It shows his divine authority, but it also sparks immediate conflict. The crowds are just amazed, but the religious leaders, they are deeply offended, and they start plotting against him right from the get-go. And then we come to this verse. This right here marks the great turning point of the entire gospel. After all these mighty works, Jesus turns and asks his own disciples this question point blank. And Peter's confession, "You are the Messiah," is the very hinge on which the whole story swings. From this moment on, Jesus begins to teach openly that the Son of Man must suffer, be rejected, and be killed. The focus shifts, decisively, from his power to his purpose, the cross. All right, let's get into Section 3, Theology, from Law to Grace, understanding the book's dispensational framework. All of this breathless action and this mounting conflict, it isn't just random. It's all building toward a really profound theological point. And to grasp it, we need to look at the story through a specific lens, what we call a dispensational framework. This is what helps us see the gospel as this critical transition point from the age of law to the age of grace. So, what is dispensationalism? Well, to put it simply, it's a way of reading the Bible that recognizes that God has related to humanity in different ways throughout different eras or dispensations. You can almost think of them as different divine administrations. Now, for our purposes here, recognizing these distinctions is what helps clarify the completely unique context of Mark's Gospel. So here's the crucial point. Mark's Gospel is set right at a major transition.
Jesus' ministry takes place during the dispensation of law, which was all under the Mosaic covenant and focused primarily on Israel. But his actions, things like forgiving sins and declaring unclean things to be clean, are actively launching the next era, the dispensation of grace, which is going to be defined by a new covenant and extend to the church, to all people.
And this brings us to a vital theological distinction, the distinction between Israel and the church. Now, Jesus' earthly mission was first and foremost to the lost sheep of Israel, but Mark is very careful to include these episodes that give us a foretaste of Gentile inclusion. I'm talking about things like the healing of the Gerasene demoniac and the incredible faith of the Syrophoenician woman. These events foreshadow the age of grace, when the gospel would go out to all nations, fulfilling that ancient promise to Abraham, even as Israel's national leadership was so tragically rejecting their own Messiah. All right, so having looked at the structure and the theology, now we shift our focus to application. This is section 4, a disciple's enduring call, the gospel's message for believers today. What does this mean for you and for me, living right now in this age of grace? You know, Mark's gospel really confronts us with a direct and, frankly, unavoidable question. It's not just about admiring Jesus' power or agreeing with his teaching. The question it forces every single one of us to ask is this: what is the cost of discipleship according to the Gospel of Mark? And the answer? Well, it's clear and it's challenging. A disciple's life is shaped by self-denial and taking up a cross. It means rejecting worldly models of power and instead embracing servant leadership, patterning ourselves after the Master. It's a life of watchful readiness, always living in light of the Lord's certain return. And, just as that woman at Bethany so beautifully showed us, it is a life of costly devotion, a true offering of love that recognizes the supreme worth of Christ. And now we arrive at our conclusion. This is section 5, conclusion, a ransom for many, the central purpose of the servant king. This is the very heart of Mark's message. All the miracles, all the teaching, all the conflict, it has all been pointing to this one climactic truth. This verse is the key that unlocks the entire gospel. Jesus, the mighty Son of God, the Lord of the Sabbath, he didn't come for glory or for power in a worldly sense. He came to serve. He came to give his life as a substitutionary payment, a ransom to redeem many. This, my friends, is the good news. May the weight and the grace of this truth settle deeply into all of our hearts and just completely transform how we live. Thank you so much for joining me for this overview of the Gospel of Mark. For more in-depth studies, visit the Grace and Knowledge series blog at woodybrohm.online.